His wife abandoned. Her disabled husband right by his mother's grave, unaware. He was a secret billionaire. 3 months later, she begged to meet. Aniglamuk time? I can still hear her words echoing through the rain-soaked air, sharp as a blade against my skin. I'm tired of living with a moving corpse. I wasn't born to push wheelchairs and soothe crying kids all night. Those were the venomous words Jessica whispered in my ear right there at my mother's graveside in Whispering Pines Cemetery, Savannah, Georgia. She had no idea that the man she mocked as a useless invalid, Owen Maddox, was secretly a billionaire heir to an $8.3 billion empire hidden behind layers of trusts and anonymity. 3 months later, when her world crumbled, she came crawling back begging for one last meeting. What happened next will make you question everything about loyalty, betrayal, and the true cost of abandoning those who need you most. Viewers, what would you do if your wife left you and your son at your mother's funeral? Drop your thoughts in the comments. The afternoon rain fell in a steady drizzle, turning the ground into a muddy slurry under the canopy of ancient oak trees draped in Spanish moss. I sat in my wheelchair at the edge of the grave, my hand gripping the armrest tightly, the other holding my 6-year-old son Eli close. He clutched a single white lily, his small fingers trembling as he stared at the fresh earth covering my mother's casket. The mourners huddled under black umbrellas, their faces blurred in the gray light. Friends, distant relatives, a few colleagues from my old construction days. The air smelled of wet soil and wilted flowers, heavy with the finality of loss. My mother had been my anchor, raising me through poverty after my father left us. She never knew the full extent of the fortune I'd inherit from my late uncle, but she insisted on the secrecy clause in his will no one could know until after her death. She wanted me to build character, to stand on my own, even if after the accident 2 years ago standing meant relying on wheels. Jessica, my wife of 7 years, stood beside me, her perfectly curled hair untouched by the rain under her wide-brimmed hat, lips painted a bold red that seemed out of place in this somber scene. I felt her shift uneasily, her high heels sinking into the grass. Then she leaned down, her breath hot against my ear. "I'm done, Owen," she hissed low enough for only me to hear at first, but her voice carried in the quiet. "This life, pushing you around, dealing with Eli's tantrums, it's not what I signed up for." Gasps rippled through the small crowd as her words registered. Eli looked up, confused, his eyes wide. She straightened, pulling a crumpled brown envelope from her designer bag and tossing it onto my lap like discarded trash. "Sign it, the divorce papers. I'm choosing better." Her laugh cut through the rain cold and triumphant. Then she turned linking arms with Tyler, her lover, the marketing executive she'd been seeing for nearly a year. They walked away toward his gleaming Range Rover parked at the cemetery's edge, her heels clicking defiantly on the path. She didn't look back, not even at Eli, who burst into tears, burying his face in my side. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just placed a hand on my son's shoulder, whispered that we'd be okay, and bowed my head one last time to my mother's grave. Inside, something hardened a resolve born from years of quiet strength. They thought I was broken, but I wasn't reacting. I was planning. That night, after tucking Eli into bed with promises of better days, I wheeled myself into the small study at the back of our modest house in Savannah. The room was my sanctuary, a place Jessica had always dismissed as my dusty corner for old books. She never ventured in here, no mirrors for her makeup, no designer bags to clutter the shelves, just stacks of engineering texts, a worn desk lamp, and a locked drawer that held secrets even she couldn't imagine. As the rain pattered against the window, I unlocked it and pulled out the folder emblazoned with a subtle gold emblem, Forthbridge Trust Holdings. The documents inside were yellowed at the edges, but their weight felt heavier than ever. A letter from my late uncle Harlan Maddox, the founder of Elwick Dominion, a sprawling investment conglomerate focused on infrastructure, real estate, and emerging tech across the Southeast. The entire empire valued at $8.3 billion is yours, Owen, it read. But on one condition, secrecy until after your mother's passing. She didn't want the world to define you by wealth. She wanted you to learn resilience, to stand tall even when life knocks you down. I'd honored that for years, living as an ordinary man, drawing only minimal dividends to cover necessities without raising suspicions. I met Jessica 8 years ago at a coffee shop in Atlanta during a rare break from my construction job. I was just a mid-level engineer then, overseeing bridge projects along the Georgia coast, strong, ambitious, with calloused hands and a steady paycheck. She was a vibrant PR assistant, all smiles and energy, with dreams of climbing the corporate ladder. Our first date was simple, a walk along the Savannah River, sharing stories of our upbringings. Mine was humble, raised by a single mother in a trailer park after my father bailed, scraping by on her waitressing tips. Jessica's was more polished. Her family had a small business in Charleston, enough to afford vacations, but not extravagance. "I love how grounded you are," she'd said, leaning into me. We married 2 years later in a small chapel, with Eli arriving soon after, a bundle of joy that made our little rented house feel like a palace. Life was good at first. I'd come home from the site, dust-covered and exhausted, to find Jessica cooking dinner pasta or grilled chicken, nothing fancy, but made with care. Eli would toddle over, grabbing my legs, and we'd laugh about his latest mischief. Jessica handled the home front while I worked overtime to save for a down payment on our current house. "We're building something real," I'd tell her, and she'd nod, her eyes sparkling. But cracks appeared early, subtle at first. She started eyeing luxury magazines, sighing over ads for designer clothes and exotic trips. "One day, Owen, we'll have it all," she'd say, but her tone carried a hint of impatience. Then came the accident. 2 years ago, on a foggy morning at a bridge renovation site near Brunswick, a beam gave way. I remember the scream of metal, a jolt as I fell, and waking up in the hospital with doctors explaining I'd never walk again. Paralyzed from the waist down, spinal cord damage too severe for recovery. Jessica was there at first, holding my hand through the surgeries, whispering encouragements. But as weeks turned to months, her visits grew shorter. The physical therapy sessions were grueling. I'd push myself in the rehab gym, sweat pouring down, determined to adapt. She started making excuses. "Eli needs me," or "work is piling up." Truth was, she'd gone back to her PR job part-time, but I sensed something off: the late nights, the new perfumes, the secretive phone calls. I covered the medical bills, quietly dipping into the trust's anonymous dividends. Jessica assumed it was insurance or savings. She never asked details, just complained about the burden of ramps in the house or helping me transfer to the bed. "This isn't the life I pictured," she'd mutter when she thought I couldn't hear. Eli became my light, his innocent questions about why Daddy used wheels instead of legs, his drawings of us as superheroes. I'd read him bedtime stories, wheeling beside his bed while Jessica scrolled through social media, liking posts of glamorous couples on yachts. The changes escalated. About a year ago, she started networking events that stretched into weekends. I'd overhear snippets, laughs with a male voice on speakerphone, mentions of Tyler, her charismatic boss at Bridgestone PR. I confronted her once gently over dinner. "Is everything okay? You've been distant." She waved it off with a forced smile. "Just work stress, Owen. Don't overthink." But I knew. The trust gave me access to discreet resources. A private investigator confirmed the affair 6 months in. Photos of them at hotels in Atlanta, her hand on his arm, his smug grin. I didn't rage. I filed it away, focusing on Eli and the impending revelation of my inheritance. My mother's health declined rapidly after that, cancer, aggressive, and unforgiving. She passed peacefully in her sleep, her last words to me: "Be strong for Eli's son. And remember, true worth isn't in money, it's in character." The funeral was her final gift, the lifting of the secrecy veil, but Jessica chose that day to shatter us. As I sat in the study that night, staring at the Elwick Dominion dashboard on my screen, a digital map pulsing with assets, 17 subsidiaries, 214 properties, 200 employees, I felt the shift. Bridgestone PR glowed as one of the dots, a mid-tier firm I'd acquired years ago through the trust kept anonymous. Jessica thought she was escaping a trapped life with a disabled man. She didn't know her lover's job, their lavish dates funded by company cards, all traced back to me. I typed out the first email, an internal audit request for ethical violations at Bridgestone, focusing on executive spending and personal relationships. No rush. They'd chosen betrayal. I'd choose revelation on my terms as chairman. The rain outside intensified, mirroring the storm building within me, but my hands were steady on the keyboard. The rain had stopped by the time Jessica and Tyler sped away in his Range Rover, leaving mud tracks on the cemetery path like a final insult. Eli's sobs quieted into sniffles against my shoulder, his small body shaking as the other mourners murmured condolences and dispersed their umbrellas, folding like retreating shadows. I wheeled us back to the car and silenced the envelope of divorce papers burning a hole in my lap. "Daddy, why did Mommy leave?" Eli asked, his voice tiny and broken. I forced a smile, ruffling his hair. "Sometimes people make choices, buddy. But we're a team, you and me. Always." Inside, though, rage simmered, not the explosive kind, but a cold, calculated fire. She'd chosen the graveside of all places to deliver her betrayal, turning my mother's farewell into her stage for cruelty. We drove home through the misty Savannah streets, the live oaks arching overhead like judgmental sentinels. Eli fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the day's grief. I pulled into our driveway, the house feeling emptier already, Jessica's absence a void that echoed in every room. I carried Eli to bed, tucking him in gently, then returned to the study. The folder from the trust lay open on the desk, its contents spilling out like long-buried truths. I reread my uncle's letter for the 100th time, the words now laced with irony, resilience, standing tall. I'd honored the secrecy, living as an average man, even after the accident, but now with my mother gone, the veil lifted. Elwick Dominion wasn't just a name, it was power, woven into the fabric of the Southeast's economy. 17 subsidiaries, including Bridgestone PR, where Tyler strutted as creative director, oblivious that his boss's boss was the invalid he'd helped cuckold. I powered up the secure laptop, the screen glowing with the conglomerate's dashboard. Maps of assets flickered office towers in Atlanta energy plants and Charleston Tech, startups in Raleigh. Billions in play, all under my anonymous control through the trust. Jessica had always dismissed my hobby work from home as pointless tinkering spreadsheets and calls she tuned out. Little did she know those were board meetings and disguised decisions that moved markets. Her affair with Tyler I'd known for months, the investigators' reports tucked away like ammunition. Photos of stolen lunches, hotel receipts, charged to company cards, evidence of not just infidelity, but ethical breaches that could unravel careers. As I scrolled to Bridgestone's profile, a subsidiary acquired 5 years ago for its PR muscle in real estate deals, anger gave way to clarity. Tyler's bio popped up promotions greased by charm expenses, ballooning with client entertainment that suspiciously aligned with Jessica's girls' nights. I drafted the email to the internal audit team. No accusations, just a routine request. Review executive spending at Bridgestone PR for compliance. Focus on personal use of funds and potential conflicts of interest. Attached were anonymized snippets from the investigator, timestamps, receipts, names redacted but damning. I hit send the message, vanishing into the ether like a whisper that would soon roar. Wheeling back from the desk, I stared out the window at the darkened yard. Jessica thought she'd escaped a trapped life, trading me for Tyler's promises of luxury. She didn't know her new beginning rested on my empire's foundation. The divorce papers sat unopened on the kitchen table. I'd sign them eventually, but on my timeline. No rush for confrontation. Betrayal like hers deserved a slow unraveling. Eli stirred in his room, murmuring in his sleep. For him, I'd stay strong, rebuild. But for her, the woman who'd whispered venom at my lowest, I'd let the truth do the work. As chairman anonymously pulling strings, I'd watch her world tilt. Not with vengeance, but justice. She'd chosen to abandon us at the grave. I'd ensure she felt the weight of that choice, one audit at a time. The night deepened, but sleep evaded me, plans forming like storm clouds on the horizon. 2 weeks after the funeral, Jessica and Tyler wasted no time diving into their new life. From what I pieced together through the audit reports trickling in, they rented a sleek condo in Midtown Atlanta, the kind with floor-to-ceiling windows and a concierge who didn't ask questions. Tyler, emboldened by his role at Bridgestone PR, started splashing company funds on lavish dinners, weekend getaways, and gifts for her jewelry spa days, all documented in expense logs that screamed conflict of interest. They posted subtle hints on social media, her hand on his in a candlelit photo, captions about fresh starts. She filed the divorce, officially citing irreconcilable differences, demanding custody of Eli on weekends and a chunk of our assets, assuming my disability checks and savings were all we had. I let it unfold, monitoring from afar. The audit team worked swiftly, their findings landing in my inbox like clockwork, unauthorized charges, blurred lines between personal and professional, potential leaks of client data during their trysts. By week 3, I scheduled the board meeting at Elwick's Atlanta headquarters, a glass tower overlooking the city far from our quiet Savannah home. I arrived early, wheeling into the executive suite, my assistant helping position me at the head of the table. No fanfare. I wore a simple button-down, but the room knew who I was. 6 board members filed in their faces, neutral, as they reviewed the dossier I'd prepared. Tyler walked in last, cocky in his tailored suit, coffee in hand. He froze when he saw me, his face draining of color. "What the Owen? What are you doing here?" The board shifted uncomfortably. I leaned forward, my voice steady. "Hello, Tyler. I'm Owen Maddox, chairman of Elwick Dominion, the parent company of Bridgestone PR. And today I'm here to inform you that you're terminated, effective immediately, for violations of company ethics, misuse of funds, and conflicts of interest." He stammered, glancing around for support that wasn't there. "This is insane. You can't—" I cut him off, sliding the report across the table. "The evidence says otherwise. Company cards for personal trips, sharing confidential info with non-employees. You've been sloppy." He bolted from the room, defeated without another word. The fallout hit Jessica hard. Without Tyler's income, their condo lease lapsed. She tried freelancing in PR, but the industry whispered leaked reports painted her as the other woman in a corporate scandal, her name tied to the mess. Doors slammed, interviews canceled, friends ghosting. 2 months in, she was crashing on couches, her social media gone silent. Eli and I, meanwhile, settled into a rhythm therapy for him. Quiet evenings, building models or reading. I revealed bits of my inheritance to him gently. "Daddy has some special work now, buddy." We moved to a larger home in Savannah's historic district ramps, and all funded by the trust. Then came the call. My assistant patched her through. "Mr. Maddox at Jessica requesting a meeting, says it's urgent." I agreed, setting it for the headquarters boardroom, the same one where Tyler fell. She arrived, disheveled, rain-soaked heels clicking unevenly, her once-perfect makeup smudged. "Owen," she started, voice cracking as she sat across from me. "I didn't know. About everything, I'm sorry. I was scared selfish. I left when you needed me most." Tears flowed. "Please, just let me see Eli. I want to be his mom again." I pulled out a photo from my wall at Eli at school, beaming with a science fair ribbon. "He's fine. Stronger now." She reached for it, sobbing. "I miss him. Give me a chance." I met her eyes, unflinching. "Being a mother isn't something you reclaim when you're out of options. You walked away at my mother's grave, Jessica. Left us broken." She dropped to her knees, clutching my hand. "Please, Owen. I beg you." I pulled away gently. "You made your choice. Now live with it." She collapsed, wailing, as security escorted her out. The door closed, and with it, that chapter of my life. 3 weeks after that final meeting, a package arrived at Jessica's last known address, a dingy motel on the outskirts of Atlanta. Inside was my mother's old journal pages worn from years of handling. I'd marked one entry with a simple bookmark. "Owen is sensitive. He doesn't speak when hurt, but betray his trust and his silence becomes a permanent sentence." She must have read it because the call stopped. No more pleas, no desperate texts, just quiet acceptance of the void she'd created. Jessica faded into obscurity. Rumors reached me of her taking odd jobs, waitressing or clerking, her once glamorous life reduced to scraping by. Friends who cheered her escape now avoided her, the scandals staying too sticky. For me, life bloomed anew. Eli and I settled into our rhythm mornings at the park where he'd race ahead on his bike, shouting, "Look, Dad, bluebirds." I'd wheel behind, smiling at his joy. The Trust's resources opened doors, a top school for him, therapy to heal his wounds, even experimental treatments that gave me hope for more mobility. I stepped fully into my role at Elwick Dominion, chairing meetings with quiet authority, building legacies that honored my mother's lessons. No bitterness lingered. I'd released it that day in the boardroom. She'd abandoned us at the grave, blind to the empire at my fingertips. When she returned, begging I wasn't there, not because I'd vanished, but because I'd learned to thrive without the one who turned away. Betrayal doesn't just shatter trust, it destroys the betrayer. The strongest revenge isn't rage, it's rising above silent and unyielding. If you were in my shoes, would you have forgiven her? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more interesting and true-to-life stories.